More Than Rich podcast. Today we're thrilled to have Bob LeMent with us. Bob is not only a seasoned podcaster known for his improvisational humor and keen insights into technology and the paranormal, but also a passionate investigator of the unknown. As co-host of Static Radio and involved in projects like Everywhere is Haunted, Bob brings a unique perspective to the mysterious world of UFOs and unexplained phenomena. Now we're about to dive into the fascinating conversation about the skies above. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm going to have you send me that text because you make me sound way better than I do when I write stuff.
Yeah, I was super impressed because I'm like, nobody talks about UFOs. So what got your early fascination? Give me the rundown. Early interest.
Oh, God, yeah. If we go way back, I mean, just as a child, I was always fascinated with UFOs and things like that. And but as a child, I didn't have any experiences until I got older. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense because you would think you'd have some kind of, life-changing experience to have an interest in this topic. But I've always been interested in it. And in the age before streaming, there wasn't a lot of, available media, right? So it was really kind of a slight obsession for my younger self to get a hold of anything that talks about it, so not until probably I would say later in the 90s that really things with the X-Files and there was science fiction and everything, but I would say as far as popular culture goes, it didn't catch up until sometime in the 90s. As far as, all these unexplained things that are happening. So it was very niche. And I mean, obviously people get, to this day, still get kind of made fun of if you want to talk about it openly and honestly. I'm not a kook. I'm just interested,
Yeah. What I find funny is, you said X-Files, and growing up, that was like on the way out for me. And there's so many movies and shows that are probably like culturally relevant and truthful that have already been made. Like, I'm kind of bummed that I wasn't around in that time that you're talking about to initially see the concepts, because I feel like a lot of it's played out now, right? Like, it's just a bunch of remade stories. Like, there might have been much more truth at the time.
Definitely, we are in the age of misinformation, because if you go out onto any of the streaming services now, you can see at least tens if not dozens of these kind of UFO based documentaries that are all garbage. They're just garbage because of AI and other things, to where it's become so easy to produce this stuff that they just produce it ad nauseum now, and so you don't really have any quality, right? So it used to be that you would at least have something that was at least interesting. Now, I would say as a whole, for the kind of the genre, if you will, there's always been misinformation, always, but that seems to be part of the topic, right? So if you go all the way back, right, into World War II, they're trying to keep secrets, and in order to keep those secrets, they put out a lot of misinformation so that you wouldn't be looking at the technical aspects of things the military was doing, right? And they still do that today, and so they used it as a cover, and they still do to some extent. But now we're just basically into stuff being made up ad nauseum with no basis in anything, and it's easy to do, and that's why people do it, because it's easy and people pay attention to it, and so it adds to the pile of garbage that's available.
You made me wonder why it's so intriguing, though, and I kind of think it's because there's like this aspect of spirituality, there's philosophy involved, like it questions our entire existence, like there's so many different aspects of it, so it kind of seems normal that it would be suppressed if it gave away so much information about our existence, in a sense.
I've never been a big supporter of the, if we find out, everybody's going to go bonkers. And
I don't think so either.
I think that it's just another step, right? I mean, if you were to take an iPhone and shuttle back into the 60s and show somebody an iPhone, would they go bonkers? No. They'll be like, oh, this is pretty cool. What the heck is it? And there'd be curiosity, I think. And then there'd be some people who would be like, I don't know if I want to mess with that. It looks dangerous. And I think that's the same thing that would happen now. As far as does it hold secrets and so forth? I don't know. I mean, that's what we want to find out. It may be no secrets. It may be that it's unfortunately not as revealing as we want it to be. Most of the people focus on the technology aspect of things and so forth. And there is some that talk about, it seems like there's a lot of messages in some of these people who have had interactions that say, take care of your planet, take care of the environment and stuff like that, which is a very, nice sentiment. But I don't know if that's really the crux of it all. I mean, we have no idea because it seems so sporadic and it's not like they're going, they just seem to randomly pop up. It seems like at schools, a lot of times there's several school sightings where the school children get told via, telepathy.
That's this Zimbabwe one,
take care of your planet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. To answer your question, I'm still out on that too.
What about in terms of because this kind of veers into the paranormal realm a little bit. So I'm curious your aspect on abilities.
Sure. I think it may all be the same thing. So if you think about it, right? So people have these experiences and what kind of defines the difference between the paranormal and, kind of a UFO phenomenon. It really comes down to what the person experiences, right? But all of it could be UFOs and all of it could be paranormal. I mean, the thing is, it all hits that range of the unknown to where we don't know what's causing it, and so therefore we can't assess it. But people, if you go into an old house, you're like, oh, that was paranormal. If you're out in the middle of a field and you see something in the sky, then that becomes a UFO. But if you really think about it as a whole set of things, it could be interchangeable. Who's to say when you're in the house, there's not something in the sky above you manipulating
at the
things.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah. We have no idea. And I think that's where, if you think about it as a field of research, right, then that's what we need to do. We need to take it seriously and we need to find out what's happening. That's what you would do with any other issue that was, people didn't believe in germs. Oh, there can't be these microscopic things that get inside of you and cause problems. Of course not. That's just idiotic. And then somebody said, you know what? I think there may be something to this. Let's look at it a little closer. And then eventually
literally
technology caught up with it. And we were able to now, visualize these things in a way that humans can, right? Because we can't visualize them on our own. We need equipment in order to do that. And I think that's what we need to do with this. I mean, with Ari Loeb, the scientist who's doing a lot of research and so forth, is doing small steps and taking a lot of crap for it. Trying to find material and so forth in order to move forward on some of these things. Because until you can look at the definitive things and like elements and physical things, then you're never going to get to the crux of what's happening to people. And I think that's a good start. And I think it's great that he's a Harvard, professor who's doing these things, because then it helps people buy into it, a little bit more. And we're way ahead of, as far as that goes now compared to, even 10 years ago, as far as people's beliefs and so forth. I have been, I say personally, I've been teased relentlessly when I talk about these things because people are, oh yeah, that's so kooky and you're crazy and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, well, no, I mean, it's curiosity, just like you'd have curiosity about bugs or about, birds or about anything. I mean, it's just a curiosity about something that's even more, ethereal. in a way.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, as much as I do believe in the sci-fi aspect, I'm curious if you like buy into the notion that maybe government doesn't know exactly what's happening, and maybe they don't want to say that because it exposes our weakness. Like, it'd rather have the adversary assume it is ours, you know?
Now, so my experience with government is they don't say. They usually know more about a subject before they will say anything, and past the point of saying something, they'll usually have more information than they need. So I think they know a lot. Why they don't want to talk about it, I think, probably has to do with I'll use the word control, but it's not control in a sense of controlling people, but it has to do with controlling, the nature of like governments and things, right? So you have to. So if you ever notice, just think of the words UFO and UAP. They control language. So whenever UFO gets away from, UFO got away from them, right? They had no control over the term UFO. UFO was out in the vernacular, and everybody used it, and everybody talked about it. All of a sudden, they come up with UAP. Where did that come from? UAP task force, UAP this, UAP that. That didn't come from, the movement. That came from the government, because that's what governments do, is they love to control messages. So they control the message on healthcare. They control the message on, taxation. They control the message on all these other things. So why wouldn't they control the message on UFOs? And I'm assuming the thing is, anytime the government tries to control a message on whatever topic, it doesn't have to be any kind of out there topic. It could literally be parking tickets. Is because something is. They need to do that for a reason. So they think we need to get this under control, language-wise, so then people will listen to us, right? And then they have the funding, and they have the person power, the manpower to do it. And so then they put into these, effects to do these things. I thought, and this is a little bit of a side, but whenever Lou Elizondo came out and was, I quit this because, I want people to know the truth, or whatever the heck he said. I'm not quoting him there.
Yeah, a lot of people I know don't like him personally.
Yeah. Well, to me, totally just a way to control the language. Because once I got Lou out there talking, then everybody started using UAP, right? And then the hilarious thing was, well, I headed up a task force that had $20 million. Or something along those lines. It was like $25 million, right? And he says this in the press, and I was like, oh my gosh, $25 million in regards to the United States government is like you pulling a penny out of your pocket. If that. It's minuscule. But most people, they always refer to themselves, oh my gosh, $20 million, that's a lot of money. I mean, he literally, that's not even travel money for him to get anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, it's just, they're just tossing things out, trying to control the message. And I mean, I don't know where he's at in the scheme of things, but I would say he's probably not as much of a rebel as he puts himself out there to be. We'll put it that way, I guess. I think he's probably towing the line somewhere, because he's going to get a pension because he was in the military for so long. He's still tied to the government, and that's on purpose. He just wants to look like a rebel in order to help control the language. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
How has your background in technology influenced your approach in investigating UFO phenomena?
So for me, I'm mostly just a research reader type person. So
you don't go out of your way and stuff.
No, I'm not a boots on the ground. Let's take pictures and look at the burnt spots.
Where's the proof? Give me the proof.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to do that, but I just one of the other things that happens is, you don't have those. We're not all, Bigelow, Robert Bigelow. We all have millions of dollars where we can kind of gallivant around, do what we want. But I just read. And so I would say technology, I kind of try to think of it this way, in the sense that I try to keep abreast of things as much as I can as a individual, right? And then you also have to look at things, and I always try to use kind of look at things in a logical sense, right? So you think about who is making the statement, who is, doing this or doing that, and then where they fit into the scheme of things, and how would they react if I was in their shoes? Would this be like for Lou Elizondo? I think this guy has a military career, just to pick back up on him for a second. And he's going to get, if you're in the military and you've been there for a while, you get a pretty good deal whenever you cash out, right? And you can go and retire and live a good life if you put enough time into the military, right? People, I'm sure, in your personal life who may have, 20 years good. Into the military. Yeah, it's not good. A bad deal, right? You think this guy's not
even that long, like maybe 6 years?
Yeah. You think he's going to screw that up? Hell no, he's not going to screw that up. You know what I mean? So that's where you have to think about. You can't just think, you can't listen to what everybody's saying. You have to listen to what everybody's saying with a little bit of critical thinking skills.
Like why isn't he mentioning this, or why specifically this, right?
Yeah. I've never heard anybody ask Lou, you're being pretty verbal. Aren't you going to lose everything?
That's true.
And he would say, if he answered, I would think if he answered honestly, he would say, no, I'm not losing anything. I'm probably gaining.
That's a good point.
So, but he won't, they're not going to broach that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, I'm sure there's a writer. You can only ask him certain questions, It's just like a celebrity at this point. He is a celebrity.
Need to be prefaced with the questions before I agree.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. If you and I were doing this interview, you're asking me whatever you want.
Yeah.
There was no pre-stuff, and most of these people that work and doing these kind of things, like him, are not going to probably do that. They're not going to walk in and go, "Yeah, ask me whatever the hell you want,"
Yeah, because they don't want to look bad for a moment if they get slipped up on a trick question or something. Yeah,
right. Or if they, if you catch them in the, I'm still on government payroll. I'm still accruing time. Because that's what all these systems are about, is accruing time. And so, he's not, he's not of retirement age. He's not 65 years old yet or anything. But you don't have to be if you're in a military situation. So because it's different, it's a different system than the regular people.
It goes to show, I guess, the position also as well, not just military. And then it made me think about, there's 1,000 million, there's 1,000 millions in a billion. So that also makes me realize why people don't have a concept of how much money 20 million really isn't anything. 25 million. Yeah.
When you're talking about $1 trillion, $20 million is, it's not even a penny in your pocket.
Wow.
And that's one of the things that, these large corporations, don't pick on the government totally, but large corporations or governments or anything like that have an advantage because they understand this. They have the ability to have the time to understand this, the vastness of it all, whereas the average person is,
trying to pay
bills. Scraping day to day, and they're like, "Hey, I found $20. My day is made."
Yeah.
Whereas, they're like, well, 20 million, they could just toss it out the window when they're driving along and not even think about it. That's a rounding error. That's a write-off. It's not even a write-off. They won't even care about it. It's ridiculous.
It's so true. And it also makes you realize how many problems could be solved, or how many tests could easily be run for their own nefarious purposes, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. And and I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole of money, but the dollar bill is a piece of cloth with some ink on it and some safety measures so that you don't make them yourself. There's nothing inherently special about it other than you have the United States government backing it up, right? And we all buy into it. And so you've got to buy into the system in order to be to get better in the system, right? It's one of those games that just like the phone games, they only let you get so far until you have to buy coins or chips or donuts or whatever the hell kind of thing they make up in order for you to get better at the game, and you can only make it to a point. And that's what the United States is. It's the same situation. I mean,
do you anticipate that all, like even the most richest have been compromised in America?
In what regard do you mean compromised?
As in, like, maybe working with the government, most basic.
Yes, I would almost unequivocally say every person who is in the hundreds of millions up, right? Not the millionaire. You probably have a millionaire that's a neighbor, for Christ's sake. You just don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
But anybody who's up there, the Elon Musks and
that's who I was asking, really. Yeah, that's what I really was asking.
They all have been contacted and talked to, but they, in a way, they have to, right? So think about it. If you attain such a certain level of success, right, you're not going to be able to operate as an ordinary person on any given day. You'll see them appear places and so forth to give you the illusion of being an ordinary person, but they're not an ordinary person at that point. They can't just move around, in the same way that you and I move around during the day to go to the store and pick up a loaf of bread or something, right? So I think inevitably at some point, if for no other reason but through the IRS, they are contacted by the government, and then they become kind of in that situation, because the other thing is the government doesn't want these people to be picked off randomly. I mean, think about it. If all of your wealthy people get, taken out, then who wants to be wealthy? You know what I mean? It's all part of the, to me, it's all part of the game.
You just kind of implied that the government might be protecting them.
Oh, I would say certainly they are.
Wow. So you're saying there's probably, like, an anticipation, like, these are the world's smartest people, we should keep them safe, even if they're not aware we're around.
I can almost guarantee you that when Elon Musk he's from South Africa. Mm-hmm. If he wants to go home to South Africa, somebody is contacted before he leaves the country. Now, you and I, if we want to leave the country, even though it's part of more of a system kind of a situation, you have to talk to somebody before you can leave the country. I think their conversations are a little more involved than ours when we want to go somewhere. And not that they can't go, but there is a list, and I think everybody can access it. There's a list of where to go and where not to go in the world right now, today, and it gets changed every day.
Wow. I don't think I knew that. I really don't think I knew that.
Yeah. If you look it up, you can go look up and say, I'm trying to think of a good phrase for you to Google, but
you're right.
What's the security
example would be like Russia.
Yeah. And in some places you can't go. You literally will not be, you'll have to go someplace else to go there. So
you're saying, like, not even a travel restriction, just no option.
Right. You can't go to North Korea.
Oh shit. I didn't know that.
No, you go. Don't try it, because then you will be talked to by the government. But you can't say, I'm just going to hop on a plane to North Korea. That's not going to happen.
Interesting.
What you can do is you can go to South Korea, and then you can try to go to North Korea, and people have done it. But trust me, when you come back, somebody's going to be waiting for you.
Damn. And that's ironic, too, because I was actually talking to the cultural ministry of Russia about a show performance recently. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, we don't plan this for one-off performers. If it was like a bunch of artists or something, they might be more interested. But that had me, like, thinking, like, would I even want to go? Like, I was like, this is the weirdest. Like, we didn't even talk about security or details, and I'm just all freaking out. Like, you know what? Maybe they don't like Americans, period. And it doesn't have to do with my music.
I don't know that they don't like them. It's just, I think the rules change whenever you get into those situations. It's just, we're not all, everybody loves to think everybody's on the same level, but there's not. There's multiple levels for and it all depends on, situations. So I'm not saying that the government pays for their security or anything, but believe me, the government, I think, has a vested interest in their security, and they have their own security, but the government has a vested interest in how secure they are. And if they're going to go places and so forth, then they're going to,
That's interesting. You
Yeah.
made me think that we got like a secret service for celebrities in a sense or something. But
it kind of in a way, I mean, I don't know if that's a secret service for celebrities, but there certainly is, obviously better options for celebrities, and they'll do things for people that they won't do for other people.
When we're talking about other governments, though, I'm curious your perspective on which countries are most enticing with like UFO alien information, most open about it, that kind of stuff.
My understanding, at least from what I've read, the most open ones seem to be Mexico and Italy.
Interesting.
Because I think in France as well. So in Mexico, there's a whole UFO culture. They've held, that's where Jaime, I can't think of his last name, but he's a reporter, and they had the little aliens, right, that they dissected, and some people are like, oh, those things look, is it cake? And is it alien? They made fun of it and everything, but then they x-rayed them, and there is bones in there and other things that make sense. And it wasn't just an amalgam of something that somebody put together. I think the jury's still out if it's real or not. But I think that Mexico as a government is more open to talking about that. They've released footage way before the United States did on UFOs from their military. Same thing with Italy. Same thing with France. They've all talked about it openly. Same thing in Japan, oddly enough. I think it's the prime minister's wife talks about being abducted.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I'd say the kind of the superpowers, United States, Russia, China, they're the ones that aren't really, as forthcoming governmentally. Just here lately, what was it, 2017, 2018, when the Navy released things. And so, we're lagging behind. They've already opened up. Actually, there's an Iranian fighter pilot who had an encounter who's very open about it. And that was the Iranian government of all places, which, there's always problems in that part of the world. So,
yeah.
And he's done several talks and whatnot and hasn't gotten stifled from a country that everybody thinks is stifling. So go figure.
Are you familiar with Stanton Friedman?
Yeah, Stanton Friedman. Yeah.
What did you think of Majestic 12?
That's a tough one. The funny thing is that actually played into the X-Files during its
really
release. Yeah, they had a Majestic 12 episodes.
Wow.
So I don't know. I mean, it's been, unfortunately, it didn't come out at the right time. I think if it would have come out earlier, it would be a little more easy to swallow as far as it was real. I mean, they say the paper, they say, the seals and all these things look real, right? But I mean, you gotta have the skepticism a little bit, because I mean, that's a pretty big, pretty big document if it's real, right? To be out there. And so, and these people with forgeries, I mean, they put more effort into forging tennis shoes for Michael Jordan tennis shoes than they do anything else. Yeah. So, I mean, I can't imagine that somebody wouldn't have put the effort into that. And getting, the paper and so forth is not an impossible task at the time that all this kind of broke. So I'm a little skeptical. I wouldn't be surprised, because of the names who are on the list are all relative, but they're all known, though. It's not like there's somebody that's popped out of there that nobody knew about, and they're like, and they didn't know about it at the time, and then now has come out to be somebody that was of real big importance. I mean, that could still happen, but unfortunately, as we go into the future, those kind of discoveries, you're going to be more on the I don't believe it side than you are on the believe it side, because the technology has gone, caught up so much that we can create just about anything,
all right, what are your thoughts on Linda Moulton Howe? And then I was going to ask about Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm. I love that
Linda's
show, by
one
the
of
way.
my favorite. Linda's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, well, my understanding from her is was a reporter back in the 70s and investigated her big
The cow
push into all this with the cow mutilations, which is a very bizarre thing, and it ties to Skinwalker because we've already seen that on the show, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think that she's very. I think she comes from it from a journalistic standpoint. I think overall she is
40 years, dude.
Yeah, very believable in a lot of what she has. She has material that she's let be examined that is material that's not natural in a natural state on Earth, right? It had to be manufactured in some type of a 3D printing style operation, but she's had it for like 20 some years or something. So it's not a 3D printing. It's more than 20 years, 3D printing kind of thing. But anyway, I think that she's, I think that if you're listening to her, chances are it's pretty good. I think that she's probably tried to vet everything because of the nature of her background.
Oh, dude, have you seen her interviews too, where she'll like backfire at people for like asking her bad questions?
Yeah. Well,
I love it.
When you get older, you're just like, I'm not going to put up with crap.
For sure. You're like, do you know who I am? Did you even research me? Yeah, I feel that.
I think she's probably more believable than a lot of them.
That's true,
and so
dude.
forth. But again, she's human, and so I mean, you always have to put it out there and say, maybe on this one. I mean, I can't remember on anything specific on that, but I would say she's probably better than most as far as reporting on stuff and so forth. Because some people, drink the Kool-Aid.
She's not biased.
You're all in.
Yeah, she's not trying to reinforce her own beliefs in any way, I don't feel.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think she comes off as very genuine and professional on a lot of the stuff that I've seen her on and so forth. When you get into ancient aliens territory, it runs the gamut. Some of those folks are, I think, more sincere, and some of those folks are, this is my job and I'm going to do my job and get paid because I'm a UFO expert or, whatever expert they want me to be. And, they kind of just are all in on whatever it is. Oh yeah, I believe that. And it's like, well, maybe you should be a little more critical of it,
Yeah, go into detail on Skinwalker a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on Bigelow and just the whole phenomenon, right? It seems like it knows what you know before you make your decision.
It's wild, though, isn't it? I would say, first off, it's the best show out there on the topic because I think they approach it like I was just talking, that they should approach it. You need to analyze it. You need to figure out what's happening.
Unless you're digging.
Well, but that's interesting, right? So
right.
They literally now, because of that, are wearing radiation sensors to know, because Travis Taylor got irradiated, and not from a dig site, but just from a well. And then they tested that well. That. You don't remember? That's what early on in the early show.
Damn, I don't remember that one.
You had to go back first season probably. They were looking in a well that was on one of Homestead 2 or something like that. I can't remember exactly where it was at. Anyway, they took the lid off. He's looking down in there. Next thing you know, he has to have skin cut off his face because he got irradiated so bad that he has essentially had skin dying on his face. And so then now on, they all wear radiation sensors so that if anything spikes, then they can get out of there before they get hurt, because he literally had to go to the hospital for it. I mean, it wasn't like it melted his face, but it was just, he noticed he had a spot, and he went to the doctor right away just after that happened, and voila, he's got this thing. It's like, how did that happen? It didn't happen because of the sun. Damn. It happened because he got irradiated with a high level of radiation, like a burst.
Coming from underground?
Coming from a well. Yeah, weird stuff. So, but they don't, what I love about the show is they don't just, so you talk about paranormal and all this kind of stuff. Everybody loves to talk about energy. Oh, this has got energy. That's got energy. This is energy. What energy has, you can measure energy in a lot of different ways. I mean, probably hundreds of different ways.
You don't like that term, apparently.
No. That's a cop-out term. That means you don't know, and you're just saying, oh, it's got a lot of energy. You have no freaking clue. It sounds fantastic, and it sounds fantastical, but the reality
I'm a sidekick, buddy. I know my terms.
Yeah, you can say Energy can be radiation. Energy can be voltage. Energy can be...
That is true.
All these different things, and they're all measurable. And that's what this show, Skinwalker Ranch show, is doing, is it's trying to measure it. Energy can be 1.6 gigahertz on the radio spectrum. So that's... Energy is all these different things. It's not just a word. Yeah. And, you can say spiritual energy, which makes it even more fantastical, right?
You're because like, thanks. Now I don't know what you're talking about.
There's no spiritual energy,
It's a vibe. You don't get it.
Okay, you got a vibe. Fantastic. You can say that. You say, that makes more sense to me, but everybody loves to put the word energy into it because it thinks it, I believe they think it legitimizes them. It legitimizes what they're saying. I love to watch all these shows, even though some of them drive me crazy because I got on this energy kick. But so I was watching Paranormal Caught on Camera yesterday, I think it was even. And they're like, it takes so much energy to flip a chair. Well, you know what? It does. But, they can measure that. It takes a certain amount of foot-pounds per square inch to move something. How does a ghost, or whatever you're saying this is, generate those foot-pounds per square inch? Right?
There's got to be a way to measure it. Yeah,
there's a way to measure it. And guess what? If you go in a place where chairs are flipping over, you can put a device on top of that chair and see how much energy was used to move that chair. Right? It's possible. So just get in there early. Put all these things out. I mean, your phone will tell you, the accelerometer on your phone will tell you how fast it moved. And you can do math to figure out how much energy was used to make it move that fast.
Damn, that's a good ass point.
So everybody needs to stop using that term energy and start
actually measuring it.
Actually measuring it. Exactly. That's what drives me nuts. Oh my God. I'm sorry.
It's like you have no proof. These claims, baseless, meritless. Throw it out. What are your thoughts though on the precognition aspect of it? It's almost like playing a joke on you, right? Like you saw the part where thinking about something comes downstairs, everything's rearranged. That aspect.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it can. I mean, that's where we get into this whole thing of telepathy and telekinesis and all this kind of stuff.
It's almost like it knows your subconscious, though.
Yeah, but your brain's constantly going. Funnily enough, there's energy in your brain, and it runs. Your brain runs on electricity, right, and chemical reactions, and so maybe it has the ability to read those, because if you see people on, get an EEG or anything like that where they stick the little helmet on their head with all the little electrodes stuck to them, they're measuring brain waves, they're measuring activity. There's nothing to say that somebody else couldn't have developed a way to do that without the cap. Maybe they can do that via some other external device. I mean, who knows? And so then if they can measure your brainwave activities, then literally they can read your thoughts, because your brain is just a electronic machine that goes. And so different parts of your brain control different functions and so forth. And so, I mean, we don't even know how the brain works fully yet. I mean, we have ideas, but we don't have a full comprehension of, I can't hook you up to something and know your thoughts necessarily, but they're happening and they are measurable, that you are thinking. And they can also look in the different portions of your brain to see where you're thinking and know that you're thinking about something that would be more creative, something like moving your hand, something like, you know what I mean? So we are narrowing it down, but we're not there yet. But who's to say somebody else is not? I mean, they could have a device that scans brains and knows what they're doing, and then okay, they're thinking about drilling a hole over here. Let's mess them up. I mean, we don't know if they're not.
That's a good point. No, I like that. I like that little analogy right there. That's a good description.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's quite a few things I want to go on there, but I was curious. Are you familiar with the Granada Treaty?
Actually, I'm not. So we invaded Grenada, but maybe it's called Granada down there. I don't know.
So I just want to read it perfectly, so I don't.
Sure.
It's Eisenhower, I believe. Granada Bilateral Investment Treaty. It's an outer space treaty. It's really weird. So,
okay,
if I'm not mistaken, I don't even want to go too deep into it, but I believe Eisenhower was approached by otherworldly beings and then made like a deal that they can experiment on humans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's supposedly some film of that that's always been bopping around. Everybody says there's film of where Eisenhower met the aliens, right? I didn't realize it was called the Granada Treaty. That's interesting.
Yeah, they actually signed a deal. So that's another reason I wonder if the secrecy has, it's implied in that.
I mean, I have no clue if they signed a deal or not, but I can tell you where my logic takes me, and that is, so here's the things that we do know, right? And so you can extrapolate a little bit. We're doing, kind of speculation, but what I would call logical speculation, because you are taking real things and then looking and applying them to known things, applying, where they might play out, right? So, World War II happens, right? We luckily we won. We won World War II. And then there's Operation Paperclip happens. Operation Paperclip is where they bring all the Nazi scientists that we can. We split them with Russia, right, and the other allied nations. But I'd say that if you want to think of it like dodgeball in gym class, U.S. got first pick, right? So we got all these great Nazi scientists that came over, and then we basically put them right to work on what they were working on over there, V2 rocket and so forth. Over here, Werner von Braun, who was the head of NASA, was a Nazi.
Talking about the
card
bell,
carrying. What?
Are we going into the Glock bell? Is that what we're getting to?
Well, he may have something to do with the Glock. Yeah, exactly. The Glock. But no, I'm not going there. I'm going someplace else. But so he was a Nazi, right? He was, tried and true Nazi. And they go over here, like, hey, we're not going to kill you. We want you to work for us. You're going to work on stuff you were working over there. And, bibbity bobbity boo, we go to the moon, right? Back in 1969, the Saturn V rocket is based off of Nazi technology at World War II, which was the V2, and it is an iteration upon iteration after the fact, obviously, with other people contributing. So it's not like all Nazis or whatever. But
do you think we went to the moon?
Oh yeah, I think we went to the moon. This is where I'm going to jump to the next thing. I think we are. So you talked about the space treaty. We've never left space. We've always been in space since we got to space. And that's my thoughts, because if you take the logic after World War II to do all these things, which is what happened, right? And it only took them, 1969, what was it, 1945, right? It's not that long a time to get to the moon during that time period, right? And then all of a sudden in the 70s, we stopped going to the moon, right? Do you really think we stopped going to the moon?
I like the theory that we were told not to return more than that.
I think the theory is we live on the moon.
Like we've had bases. Maybe we're going to Mars already, not telling anybody.
Yeah. I don't know about Mars, but I can tell you, I would bet that there is something on the moon that the U.S. controls.
Here's my thing, though. Even when it comes to like things like remember that missing flight that everyone thinks was time traveled portal? Mm-hmm. Remember that one? Mm-hmm. So wouldn't other governments be aware of things like this though? Like,
why?
They wouldn't say, hey, America's had a base on the moon and just expose us, or they wouldn't notice that a plane went missing and being like, hey, we saw on the satellite, you're full of shit. Where did it go? Like, why don't other countries ever step in and like vouch or say we're full of shit or something?
Same reason that Lou Elizondo probably still works for the government. He's got it too good. All these people got it too good. So you piss off the U.S., what's going to happen? I mean, they're the bully, right? So you have to. Everybody has to stay simpatico, and so there's always stuff happening. They know the U.S. spies on everybody, but they let it happen because they can't upset the apple cart. Because when you start upsetting the apple cart, then you're wherever you're at, your power base can erode. They can erode your power base, right? So everybody is on eggshells because they want to keep everything going because they're living the good life, right? If you did say something, then what would happen? And who knows that we're not letting them go? I don't know.
It's also the most money that's ever been concentrated in one country in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's crazy.
But as far as the base goes, I'm like, if you were Eisenhower, if you're the World War II generals and you just finished, basically winning the unwinnable war, right?
You're motivated, huh?
Yeah, that's why we have all the satellites. That's why we have all this technology. It was like a launching pad in World War II because they needed to have it in order to win. And so it didn't stop. It's never stopped. That was kind of like, if you think about it from your own personal life, that was your motivation, right? To do something. I got to get it done. And they've never stopped. And the engine is just cranked up. I mean, Eisenhower himself said, "Be aware of the military-industrial complex" in a speech, right? And that's not hearsay. You can watch the video. You can watch the old newsreel where he says that because it built up during the war, and they are just doing stuff, right? And I think, and this gets to a little point of possible proof is Gary McKittrick in the UK, who found a list of non-terrestrial officers in the Navy, and I think that's also why. Do you know about him at all?
I've heard that, but It just sounds so absurd.
Exactly, but I don't think it is. So he was just this is, I think, in the early 2000s, late 90s, something like that. Anyway, he's just this weird guy who was very curious about these things. He had some skills in IT. They didn't have everything protected. He goes in, he finds this stuff, and they're all like naval type officers, which makes a lot of sense, right? So,
ocean.
And so they're out in space, working, living, doing, which makes sense because once you finish. When you're in a war, if you've watched anything on World War II, there was just a show on Apple called Masters of the Air. That is where you win a war. And if you think about it, all the technology, drone technology, all this technology, bomb technology, it doesn't come up from the underground. It comes from the air. So the best place to be if you're going to be in the next war is on the moon looking at the Earth, because you could have things up there and just drop them down.
Damn. I'm like, how have you been thinking about that one for a while?
Yeah, definitely.
That's funny. I've never considered that, just dropping nukes
because
nobody
thinks about it, right? I mean, all the satellites, everything. You're telling me that you're going to throw a bunch of satellites up into orbit, and then you're not going to have something up there that's more permanent.
We're about to get real fringe here. So before I move off that one, the other confirmation of your story is that Laura Eisenhower, his granddaughter, are you familiar? Mm-hmm. She's toured and told all these stories reconfirming what you're saying about the Granada Treaty and how her grandfather worked, and she's the one that's super into the alien topic more than anybody.
Yeah. She, but the problem is they've isolated her kind of as a kook. And so that's where the problem lies with individuals coming out.
Super intelligent. I hate it.
I'm sure she is. I mean, that's the thing. You can discredit anybody as long as you keep it discredited, and that's like this topic is constantly discredited with all these people. Like I mentioned, Gary McKittrick in the UK, they're still trying to deport him. This poor guy. It's been years and years. He found this. He mentioned it. Put it on some bulletin board system back then, and he's not a bad person. He's just an average Joe who stumbled upon something, and they're still trying. The UK won't let him go, but they're still trying to deport him. If it's nothing, why?
It's crazy. It makes you think that there's something there, though. There's probably some truth to it, right?
Well, I believe that it's totally true. I think that the reason that we don't have any public moon launches since that time period is because it was all private or all undercover stuff to build up this ability. The reason that we have Space Force now is because there's always been a Space Force And we just decided, okay, we're going to say there is one now. The Air Force was in existence before there was an Air Force. It was called the Army Air Corps. All these things don't just appear out of nowhere. There's a huge amount of planning, and generally, when they happen, they've already been happening. So whenever the government brings something forward, it's not because they just thought of it and today we're going to do it. We've been doing this for 20 years and we found it as effective, and now we finally have to bring it out in the open because too many people know. We can't hide it anymore. We need to make it. Because is it interesting that the UFO releases and the Space Force coming into public existence happened in close proximity?
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Sorry.
No, that's a good point. Wow. It's actually a lot to think about. But then what does that mean for Elon Musk, though? Like, is he just part of controlled opposition? Like, maybe they're using him and actually need to go to Mars. Maybe they're already on Mars.
I would not put it past anybody to say that they weren't already doing something on Mars. I mean, that's logical thinking, right? That's what you would do. Here's
real logical. Do you know Andy Basiago?
I think I've heard the name, but I'm not as familiar.
I'll summarize super quick. In the 50s, his dad put him in a time travel project.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they were jumping through portals, and he claimed that there was an elevator that they would go to Mars. There was a Mars jump room in 2008, and that his dad was going back in time and bringing back the papers that he was going to write in 2008 and being like, memorize these, refine them, and make sure that it is what it's going to be. And you can find them. You can find
I think pictures. I've seen something on him actually that you mentioned. I just couldn't remember the name.
It's an 8-hour long testimony where he goes through his entire life, going from like, well, the government and your dad would volunteer students to be in the CIA, all this long, detailed explaining why it's believable.
Yeah, and I would say, you just have to take it with a grain of salt, but I would say there's probably something in there. We have a long history here in the country of doing experiments that are unethical. Some of them get found out, like if you know about the Tuskegee Institute and the people that were given syphilis to see what effects it would have on them, and they're all black men. And then that came out, and now there's laws in place so that can't happen again. Well, I would hate to tell people. I'd say maybe it doesn't happen in public, but I'm sure it happens in private. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. They took, back in the 50s and 60s, they took servicemen and gave them LSD to see what the effects were on them. So not with their knowledge. They totally had no clue what was going on.
I had friends in military that were like, dude, I was given these pills one time and my dreams were insane. Like I've had those kinds of friends and experiences.
And in the Gulf War, they gave them some stuff it was experimental for, I'm trying to think of what it was, but it was, nerve agent stuff. And, and they weren't totally aware. I mean, it happens constantly in under the guise of greater good.
You're part of an experiment and you don't know it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you may or may not know it. I mean, they sprayed nerve agent on San Francisco to see how people reacted and stuff. That happened in the
Corpus
50s.
Christi too. Yeah, Corpus Christi.
The
top of buildings.
Yeah, it happened. There's multiple known cases now, so that to me, it's always tip of the iceberg kind of situation, which says,
and now we just use the food.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's all. I always say that everything is possible. You just don't know it yet, and you can't poo-poo anything in these realms unless you have rock solid knowledge that it's not true. I mean, and nobody does. So. Even what I'm spouting off, who knows? I mean, I don't say that I'm totally right. I have no proof of any of it. I'm just taking things that I've read that are considered true and extrapolating upon them to say, well, this would make the most sense. If you have a military-minded, government, then they're going to do military-minded things. We could. This whole. I always tell people that as a species, the human race has a huge issue with scale. We always think the world is overpopulated. There's no place you can go where you don't see other people. Totally not true. Totally not true. Fly in an airplane and just look out the window the whole time. There's a whole lot of fucking nothing out there. And so but just because you go between cities and cities, and you see people when you take off and when you land, if you're looking at the in-between just in the United States, there's a whole lot of nothing that could have anything in it, but people think, oh my God, anybody says overpopulation. Oh yes. Well, because on my street, there's so many people. No, I mean, there is plenty of space. The issue is not space. The issue is how do you serve population effectively if they're spread out everywhere? You don't. So that's why everybody clumps up. And the system, the monetary system, the societal system, whatever you want to call it, keeps people together in order to facilitate that, right? Because if we all decided to just take off and everybody gets 1 square mile, there'd still be room for a lot more people than there are currently today. And so we always have this scale problem. We have a scale problem with money, a scale problem with land. We have a scale problem with space, a scale problem with the ocean. We can't fathom all of these things. And then all anybody has to do is say something, and you fathom what you know, and you're like, oh, it's awful crowded. And you're like, you know what it is? I've been to New York City. That place is just full of people. And then you extrapolate New York City onto the whole world, which is not the case.
Damn. Now that's a pretty good generalization. Also, before I move on to this next question, that experiment with Andrew Basiago is called Project Pegasus. Just in case anyone wants to look that up.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
In your view, how has public perception of UFOs changed since you first became involved in discussing?
Oh, for me, massively. So, we couldn't have had this conversation in an open forum, 20 some years ago, because the technology didn't exist like it does now. Yeah. But also because I think that most people were closed-minded to the subject. And so, if you talked about it, then you were kind of the weirdo of things, as opposed to being an open-minded person. And nowadays, I think people just have more of an open mind, and that could be because of media and because of other things and so forth. And that I think everybody's a little bit more, open to talking about it, even if they don't believe everything. It's not got the taboo all over it that it used to have, and so forth. So it's I think it's better that way. It's better to have the discussion, even if everybody doesn't believe you. At least they're going to consider it. Yeah, think. That's a big issue with everybody needs to think.
It's so basic, and you'd be surprised how many people don't do it anymore.
They just go with whatever they whatever kind of fits in their wheelhouse at the moment, or I grew up and my parents said they didn't believe in UFOs, so I don't believe in UFOs. It's like, no, that's not what we are. We all have our own path, no matter where we come from, and you need to really take some time to think about what you want, or what you want to pursue, or what you want to believe in, and go in that direction. I mean, we have that freedom at the moment. We have that freedom, so take it. I mean, don't let anybody else tell you no. I mean, you can. So
on top of not just the freedom, but the ability, right? Like the country, the time that we're in, all of that all together is a good enough reason. It's not so much that you have the ability. It's like, it's a rare time in a sense,
and we have the resource. You can search things, anything you want to, on the internet currently, and that's not going to be. I'm not saying that it won't be forever, but it might not be forever, because I don't know if you've.
I feel like that about AI.
Yeah, if you notice, things are closing in, right? So, you and I are having this conversation. When I started recording stuff and putting it onto the internet, which has been quite a while ago, nobody was doing it, and it was just the Wild West. But now things are getting a little more enclosed, and the popular things are the popular things that were, and then there's not new popular things. So just like the government wants to control the message, big media wants to control media, and so they've come in, and big media, all the old media is all over the internet now, where it didn't used to be that way even five years ago.
And they're still struggling for eyeballs. They're on where all the eyeballs are at, and less people care than more than ever.
That's great, though. I think that's fantastic. I don't want them to control the. Yeah. It's just I get ironic. So angry that they're putting ads on Netflix and Amazon unless you pay them more. It's like the whole reason that everybody wanted this was because we didn't want to watch the ads.
But isn't it so ironic that they took so long to adopt and change? Just to change and then try to move everything to what they're doing, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, all right,
well, that's
since we're here, we'll move it around us now.
Exactly. Well, but everybody does. That's what everybody who's in control wants to stay in control, and so they're just doing the same thing that anybody else would do in their situation. Now, it's fragmented a lot, but you also have more people, and so. It evens out in a little ways, but they're trying to make it as profitable as possible for them, and you can't blame them. I was talking to somebody about streaming, so I'm like, if you want to mark it on your calendars, streaming came of age between 23 and 24 because the Super Bowl, the Oscars. All your major live sporting events are streaming now, where prior to this, they were not. And that was the last bastion of broadcast television, was these big live events. And now that's gone. So there's no more television. It's all streaming. I mean, there's still going to be, just like radio, and they'll still be out there,
Super Bowl,
but they're not going to drive things anymore. They're not the driver. So.
That's a good point. And also the social medias are finally, in the last week, have started changing the formula to rewarding the not so high quality creators, like the less
so original
studio
content. Yeah. Which I read that article. I read an article about that, and I was surprised. I was glad, and I was surprised. We'll see if that holds true, because if, for lack of a better person to pick, but if Kim Kardashian reposts a meme, don't you think they're going to post her higher, even though it's the same meme as on everybody else's feeds? So
that's a good point.
I want to, if Kim Kardashian was actually doing something, creative and putting it out there, then yes, I would agree. But I think that there's a lot of that reposting that goes on in all these celebrity feeds. And so are they going to really ding them? I don't know. We'll see.
I feel that. What about your most compelling UFO incident that you've come across, and why does it stand out?
Okay. So I believed in this stuff for a long time, but I did have an experience, and it was confirming, right? So since I'd already been thinking about this all this time, this was just confirmation, right? So in hopefully I'm gonna get my date right here, because you can look it up, because I have it on my website. But I think it was 2004 in May, about this time, actually, not too long after this, I think. I had picked my kids up and was playing with them in the backyard in the afternoon. It was around 4 o'clock ish. And at the time, my son, who was younger, had a kind of an affinity for airplanes. And so where we lived at the time, we were in the flight path for an Air Force base. And so I would point out planes to him. I'd say, "Oh, look, there's, a plane." And he didn't care what it was. He just liked to see a plane. He's a little kid, right? So, and so I'm swinging him on the swing in the backyard, and I'm kind of keeping my eye up to see if I see any planes. And out of the corner of my eye, I catch something, and I look over there, and I was going to say, "Oh, look, there's a plane." And when I look at it, it is a ball. It is a large metallic looking ball in the sky, and it is probably it's pretty high up there, like where the jets would be, right? So I'm guessing somewhere around 15,000, 20,000 feet, something like that. It is coming from the southeast and heading northwest in direction. And it flies overhead of us at a pretty good clip. So, I might have watched it for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. And I watched it pretty much from when I caught it out of the corner of my eye, it was pretty small, and it went over our heads and went off on the horizon in about 10 or 15 seconds. And
is that pretty quick?
It's very quick. I mean, it wasn't like super fast, but it was moving faster than a jet.
Oh, wow.
So it's hundreds of miles an hour, right? So, but it was a ball, and it looked metallic. It reflected the clouds onto itself. I could see it going behind clouds and then in front of clouds. And it just literally zipped by, and I was like, I just was dumbfounded, right? I couldn't do it. This was before good cell phone cameras, right? This would have been, your not even a candy bar phone, like a flip phone.
A flip phone.
Yeah, and I didn't have a flip phone on me or anything, but I couldn't take a picture, couldn't go in and take a picture. I just watched this thing buzz by us, and I was just like, oh my gosh. What? And at the time, for me at least, I don't recall reading about orbs or spheres.
I've seen orbs.
Saucers, there was triangles, there was cigar shaped, but orbs and spheres was not a big thing in the culture of UFOs at that point in time. So I had never really even read anything about them. And I was like, this is so bizarre. My kids are little, they didn't see anything. I didn't tell them to look because it just all happened.
Yeah.
And they were so little it doesn't matter, And so that it buzzes by me, and I'm like, this is the most incredible thing that I've seen, with my own eyes. And I followed it the whole time that I could across the sky. And we had seen other planes and so forth, so I kind of had a good idea of where they were in the sky. So I knew it was about the same thing. So I couldn't stop at that point. You have to deal with your children. And so then later on, I did a search online, and I found somebody in a neighboring town had seen the same thing about the same time. Whoa. And so then that was a confirmation for me that I did see.
You weren't just seeing shit.
Yeah, I wasn't just imagining it.
Wow.
And so I was like, this is why. And I mean, a few seconds. It didn't talk to me. It didn't tell me anything. Yep. It didn't come down and say, hey. It just happened. And I immediately told people, and they're like, oh, this is back, like I said, in the early 2000s. So, that's nutty. You love these things. You manifested it. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Because yes, I do love to talk about these things. I love to read about these things. But if I was going to manifest this, I would have done it a long time ago. I wouldn't have waited until that day when I was just having fun in the yard.
Just a random day.
And just say, today's the day.
I would have been planning this.
And it would have been much better, right? Don't you think?
It's a good point. People just acting like you have this ability at
right.
will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, no, and then I've never seen anything since personally. And it's, who knows? And when I talk to people, there's a couple of different reactions. So if they believe me, they either believe that it was something because I didn't say it was from another world. I have no clue. It was in our atmosphere, right? And I did live near an Air Force base. So, was it something from the Air Force? I don't know. I have no idea why they would make a round craft.
Yeah.
Because on Earth, that seems like it would be a stupid thing to do, because then you'd have to have some kind of way to land it, right? Because this was just smooth. There wasn't anything hanging off of it, There wasn't any windows. And so there'd have to be some way if it had to hover. I mean, there's little complications if it's more mechanical, I think. Plus, there's nothing that we know of that flies like that. There wasn't a big gaping hole in the middle of it where they had a drone turbo thing in the middle. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that. And there wasn't even drones back then, right? They didn't have even the kid playable drones weren't even around until about 10 years later.
Do you believe the idea that time and space could be different within the craft? Like you could walk into that craft and it's like the size of a football field.
Yeah, TARDIS, right? Doctor Who. Yeah, who knows? I mean,
yeah.
It just was but it's something that was so out of the ordinary, right? And so different that there was no denying for me. There's no wings, it's not an aircraft that we would know about. It made no sense whatsoever.
The difference between your story and mine was a glowing orb, and then I had somebody with me that saw it.
Oh, well, a good deal.
So it came down over a house, probably about 20 or 30 feet away, and then took off across the street.
How big do you think it was?
Maybe 2 feet, 3 feet max.
Yeah. My guess with the one that I saw was probably...
My reaction?
Yeah.
No, my reaction was just like, whoa. And then I looked to my friend and he's just in shock too. So like, you're looking for confirmation. You're like, are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Exactly.
And then the people in front of us, in front of the table that were looking the opposite way, by the time like we were in shock and we're like, turn around, it was gone, and they're like, we didn't see shit. That sucks.
Yeah. Yep. So the one that I saw was probably the size of 4 747s. It was big.
Damn.
It was because I could see it from the ground, and it was up about this. So if you can imagine the nose cone on a plane, take that times 4 or 5, and that's how large the sphere was, and you just made it into a sphere.
Wow.
So, but anyway, I mean, and that was very far away. So, but that's fascinating though. So you saw a glowing orb, and so then that gets in that whole debate of what was it, right? Was it paranormal? Was it a UFO? Was it, what was it? Because you're in a realm that's smaller, right? So who knows? But I mean, but then after that, then did you believe any more? Did you believe any less? I mean, what was your reaction?
What's crazy is I've probably had 2 or 3 of those experiences, but the other ones were like really far away, like falling from the sky, and then the other one was leaving the sky. So
like shooting up or something.
And then the weird part is it's always a split second, right? Like you just turned your neck and then it's happening, and you're like, what? Like, what are the odds that I even saw for that 1 second that this is happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things that make you think like, did you want to show yourself to me? That's the only.
Well, my thought is that they don't care. I mean, I think we just happen. If you think about how vast the sky is, again, this is a scale thing.
You're right though. It's kind of the ego thinking you're that important. Yeah, you're right.
So the birds are flying over you right now. You don't know they're up there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
that's a good one. I like that one.
You don't. They're not hiding from you, but you never see them, right? You look up and you're like, oh, there's a big lot of nothing up there. Maybe some clouds or whatever.
Damn, don't tell me that. It makes me think there's dimensions in my room right now.
Well, if you believe in dimensions, then there probably are.
Yeah, that notion that the next dimension, that the 3D that we're in right now, we could be the shadow of whatever 4-dimensional figure that is. It's a crazy thought. We could be a shadow.
And there's no reason. I mean, there's no reason for the atoms to, I'm sitting at a desk. There's no reason for the atoms to be desk shaped now and not be desk shaped in another second. It's just how it's arranged in our reality, right? So, or even ourselves for that matter. What makes us hold shape?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Weird.
What about? Can you discuss a time when you felt skeptical about a widely accepted UFO?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
You can just say which one is like not believable or something.
I don't. That's a good. I tend to gravitate and research more the ones that I believe in, I think, than the ones I don't believe in. I'm trying to think. I think sometimes I'm trying to, like, if I watch. So I'll just take. Unfortunately, there's that show Paranormal Caught on Camera, which has both ends of the scale, right? So they have people who I think have believable things happen, and they have people that have obviously things that are not believable. And I think they had one with lights, right? So they had these lights in the sky kind of a thing, and they were saying it was a UFO, but obviously I think it was some type, I mean, when I was watching the video, some type of spotlight that was shining up into the sky and diffusing, and it was probably fairly explainable. It's not really a famous one necessarily, but a lot of those happen, especially on that show. For some reason, I mean, it seems like they'll take anything, and if it's even vaguely mysterious looking, they put it on the show.
That's funny. Throw some suspenseful music behind it in a deep voice.
But I like the show. I think it's fun because every once in a while you do catch something that is truly
questionable.
Is truly, interesting. I can't think of a UFO. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of paranormal ones that are obviously not anything. The UFO ones is a little harder. I'm trying to think of anything that everybody seemed to talk about that I'm like, that's not it.
We can keep moving.
I can't think of anything.
I'm thinking of what about the idea that parapsychology was a degree that they discontinued? You ever thought about that one?
Yeah, well, I think the problem with parapsychology is psychology people look down upon. And so until psychology gets kind of established, parapsychology is going to have to wait.
Why is that? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you talk to people about, so there's a divide between psychology and psychiatry. So psychology is trying to learn behavior of people, where psychiatry is more of a medical side of things, where they say we can alter via drugs and things, alter people's chemical makeup in order to help
in their brain.
Yeah. So I think it's much better than it used to be, but there's still people who don't believe in psychology. Wow. And so it's just like now, and they're not fringe people either. I mean, but because and I think coming forward here, so we're in an age where I think psychology is going to have a renaissance, and this is going to be where psychology kind of comes into its own over the next probably 25 years or so, because there is, if you notice and I think, to me, I think it all has to do with governmental spending and so forth. But you notice in the media, they'll talk about mental health. They talk about people who, through the pandemic, everybody was isolated, and now we all have a certain amount of trauma that was caused by COVID, because we all became isolated, right? And some people more than others, and so some people who are used to, going out and being around people and everything were much more effective than people who are more insular and are used to being on their own. But they think everybody, right, was affected. And you'll see more and more stories about this and how it's going to affect future generations, because you have this, everybody had took the hit, as it were, who had to deal with COVID, which was so different from, regular life, as it were. And they're taking it seriously, and they're doing research and so forth. And so I think what's going to happen then is they're going to take a little bit more serious view on mental health, rather than, I'm older than you. And so, when I was a kid, it's like, suck it up and get going. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what? Your favorite toy got broken. You're crying. Shut up. You still got to go mow the lawn. And yep. Nowadays, though, that there is a little bit more empathetic version of that, where they're like, oh, it's so terrible. Well, we have to move on with things, and it's more gentle, right? And that comes out of, I think needing people to be, a little more desensitized to their feelings, and now we're fully into our feelings a little more. And so I think it's a good thing, but I think, people who need help don't get help because they don't believe in it, right? So I think psychology needs to become just like you go to your doctor, and so then it's not the norm not to go. The norm would be, I'm feeling depressed. I've been depressed now for a month. Maybe I should go see somebody and talk to them about it. But most people don't. They'll be like, oh, well, I got a shit life and this is going to be shit forever. And then they go one way or the other.
Do you have any thoughts on the secret space program?
Well, yeah, I mean, other than the moon thing, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by thoughts?
Do you think well, because I remember when I saw the panel, I was like mind blown. I was like, holy crap, all these authors that I know are speaking about the same subject. It only happened once, I think. It was like 2016 maybe. But
was that the I'm trying to think of his name, blanking on his name now. But I mean, I think that
is that with Jim Mars?
No, I was thinking, who's the doctor? The medical doctor who's
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer, that's it. Was that the Greer panel? I think that was 2016. Was that
I wouldn't doubt if he was on it, but I'm also kind of hesitant to accept his whole app
he does,
because you have to pay for it.
Right, exactly. He's making money, right? So that's always
which does that really take away? Does that really take away from it being genuine, or does the guy have to make money and eat?
It depends, right? So unfortunately, in society, we all have to make money, right? But I think
I do look down at it. It's negative, right? It doesn't look good.
I think at least initially, well, what's the reason for the money, right? So you have to ask yourself, do they have to take money? What am I getting in return for this money? And if there's no value in it, then it's probably some kind of scam, right? Well, you're going to pay us money and then you're going to get a t-shirt and a sticker and, a mug. And you're not going to really, that's what you're going to end up with at the end. And you're like, well, you're going to end up with the experience of something. It's like, are you really? I mean, and so when you see these people coming out with the experience, quiz them and say, was this worth your money? And then you'll know if it's going to be a scam or not. And I would say at this point, the reason everybody's doubtful is because you're not hearing people say that it was worth the money. So Greer, I'm on both sides with Greer. Greer has some interesting things, but then he's got some stuff that's just totally wild. So
yeah, lost my thought. I was going to ask if you saw something specifically. It was a show. Can you discuss a time when you felt skeptical about a widely accepted explanation? Oh wait, no, you already answered that. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
How do you handle the balance? How do you handle the balance between skepticism and open-mindedness?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's hard for anybody to do because you're always affected by your environment and what happens to you. So, you try to stay balanced, but some days you're going to be like grouchy and nothing that comes in your purview is going to be worth it. And you're just going to poo-poo everything. Whereas some days you're going to be euphoric and the world is great. And, oh yeah, I'll believe anything. It really is, interesting how much we, as humans, oscillate between these kind of things and how it colors our thoughts.
I just remembered. I was going to ask if you've seen Enter the Buzzsaw before with Sean Stone.
No, I haven't seen that, but maybe I should.
He would get all like the fringe people, authors that have written about controversial things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it got discontinued 2018, 2020. So he went on to his own little private network and stuff, but really good show. And one of the persons that I think about a lot is Sean David Morton.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he used to take people in the desert the same time every week to go watch these ships go off, like literally proving that UFOs and there were government experiments that are working on. Not too long after that, he was getting super into like those, I don't want to say tax scams, but he was trying to say, hey, I'm a sovereign citizen, this country.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then he went to jail for a long time. And it just sucks, though, that like somebody can be super intelligent and then fall for things like this, whether it is legal or not. But I'm like, damn, like that's a really shitty way to lock up somebody who's intelligent. Like this guy did a lot of research, has a lot of books, like time travel, just made them fictional so that you can get the work out.
Mm-hmm.
It just really bummed me out that can happen,
Yeah, but I mean, everybody's susceptible. It doesn't matter your intelligence level. I mean, it really, you just have to be willing to think about it for a bit. I think you don't really have to have any degrees, or you don't have to know how it works. You just have to be able to think, well, does this make sense in the scheme of where I'm at and what's happening? That's the only thing I watched. Speaking of that, talk about people watching things. I watched I can't even remember the name of it, some documentary on one of the streamers. Anyway, there's a guy in California who is like, oh yeah, I go out to the beach and I guide the UFOs in every, month or whatever. And he goes out there on this beachhead and you see these lights in the sky and they're coming, and he's like waving around these flashlights and everything. And I'm like, he was quite the character, right? And so it was a fun to watch just because he was kind of a fun person. Obviously had his issues and whatnot, but and then you think, well, wait a minute, he's standing on the coast in California, Los Angeles, and I'm like, I break open and there's a thing. There's an interesting app that I've loved here since I found it called Flight Radar 24. And if you look on, they mentioned where he was at, which I think was in Santa Monica. I looked on Flight Radar 24. All the flights from Hawaii come through there. So he was looking at lights in the sky, which were planes coming from Hawaii, coming in to land at LAX.
At the same time, places. All of them?
What's that?
All of them at the same time?
There's lots of flights. So go on Flight Radar. If you want to have a fun time just thinking about these lights, and you mentioned the guy in the desert, I think about this as well, is go on the Flight Radar, and especially at night, and you can see where, and I want to tell you, you can't see where every flight is. You can see where most flights are, and you can watch them. And then the fun part is, this was, once I found this, the first thing I did was I watched the Janet flights take off from Las Vegas and disappear over the desert. Because the Janet flights are the Area 51 flights. You know about this? So they're codenamed
It's like
Janet.
a no-fly zone, right?
No, well, the fun thing is if you go on Flight Radar and you find a Janet flight taking off from Las Vegas McCarran Airport, you can watch it, and then it gets over the desert, and it just literally, they turn off their thing, and it just disappears.
Wow.
And it happens every day, all the time.
Wow. So it's just like a gray zone, invisible.
Yeah. Well, they just flipped the beacon off, and they're gone. But they're heading Area. Everybody knows the Janet flights go to Area 51, but they will not show these planes going to Area 51.
Interesting.
But Flight Radar 24 is a great app, and I got into it, and my son was making fun of me because I live out in the country, and we can hear and see planes out in the sky, and so then I would find it on the. I can bring out the Flight Radar over my house.
You'd be like, where are they going, basically?
Yeah, and then, Southwest Airlines. Oh, this is it. And the fun thing is, I've seen Air Force Two fly over, and all these things. But then there's lots of planes that fly over that aren't on Flight Radar 24.
Oh,
and according to the law, every airplane has to have a transponder.
What? So what do you anticipate? You think they're not planes, or it's just secret?
They're military.
Damn.
Because they don't have to adhere to the rules. I had something I still haven't figured this out, but sorry to move on to a slightly another subject.
Go for it.
So I had this whole Flight Radar thing going for a while, and something started coming close, and it was making noise, so it wasn't like a UFO. And I'm looking out my window, and we can see, the horizon and everything. I live in the country, so there's not in a neighborhood with houses all around me. There's nothing, right? It's trees and woods and farm fields. And I'm like, okay, so I go to the Flight Radar, and I'm like, what? I wonder what's flying over us, because it's kind of noisy. It seems kind of low. Nothing on the Flight Radar. I get up, and literally coming over the trees, it was two orange lights about 6 or 7 feet apart. And this thing was not much higher than the trees. I mean, it was probably maybe 100 feet in the air, maybe, not even. And it buzzed over the top of my house. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Because it didn't have red and green lights. I didn't think that it was a UFO of any kind. I came to the decision that it was a drone, that was a non-man drone that probably flew over my house. For what reason, I have no idea, and it had no transponder. And yeah, it flew over, and I ran to the front and watched it go off into the distance.
Oh my God.
But you couldn't see it. It was dark.
Yeah.
But I saw two
Insane.
orange lights on wingtips. Looked like they were on wingtips, and it just went straight across.
Wow.
But if you want to, I mean, if you have time and you can see the sky at night, that's something to watch, because if you hear anything, you can see what it is. Most of the time it's a commercial airline or something. And a lot of times they'll tell you where it's coming and where it's going. Every once in a while you'll catch a plane that will not tell you any information, and that's always interesting. And then some of them you'll see there's a plane there and it doesn't register anywhere. So, man,
that is cool. I don't think I knew that, but now I'm gonna hop on. I didn't know that site existed.
Yeah, it's an interesting app. That's what I mean. There was the guy who was tracking Elon Musk. He got all that stuff from one of the databases like these.
Oh yeah, and Taylor Swift takes a plane to go to her kitchen.
Yeah,
just to go downstairs. Takes a plane.
All these wealthy people.
Do you believe that there is credible evidence to support the existence of ET on Earth or visiting Earth? I think that yes. So even if you don't want to believe Eisenhower's granddaughter, there's other people in the government that have come out and either they've Grush, for example.
Oh yeah, Grush he's the latest one, but there's a guy in Canada, I'm trying to remember his name, Hellion. Anyway, he was a prime minister, and he was this was in the 50s and the 60s, and he was a governmental person attached to Canadian government, and he talks about how he was in briefings and so forth with the United States about having otherworldly beings on Earth. And he's talked about it quite extensively. I wish I could pull his name out of my head right now, but if you look up Canadian government official talking about extraterrestrials, I'm sure it will pop up. I see you're searching.
Yeah, I was. It just says whistleblower alleges cover up.
Yeah, but he's Canadian.
Ryan Graves.
No, I can't. He's an older guy. I can't remember his name now. I thought it would start with an H. Unfortunately, my brain's not helping me right now. But
all good.
But he's an interesting one, and he's been around, and he's been talking about it for a while. So he's not kind of a bandwagon kind of guy. He's kind of talked about it for a number of years now. I mean, I think more than 10 years ago I seen him. So, it's you got to have to, like I said, you have to discern, because some people are kind of doing it to sell books or do speaking engagements or to make money. And he was a retired official, and I don't think he was in it for the money. So, but there's been a lot of people that talked about it. There's the guy who talked about the tall whites.
Paul Hellyer.
Paul Hellyer. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hellyer.
Yeah, it was a weird spelling. Yeah, he talked about it. Now, he didn't say he met them necessarily. He just said that he was in high level meetings for his position, where this was all talked about. And he said there's more than one species.
Wow.
And they're here. I mean, they're known.
Super interesting.
Yeah, but he's done that for quite some time. So,
damn. Yeah, right here it says at least 4 species of aliens that have visited Earth for thousands of years, with most of them coming from other star systems. Although there are some living on Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moon.
Yeah.
What? What? So they transform and look human and interact with us like they are human?
I don't know that he said that they were. I mean, if you read more about the different ones that people talk about, there are some, yes, that do, and there's some that aren't, right? So they have the insectoid people and the reptilian people and the grays and so forth. But then they have the things they call the tall whites, which look Nordic, and then they have ones that look. If you've read about
the mantis one,
yeah, the mantis one, the insect people. Then there's the Ingrid Cold was his name. He appeared in West Virginia during the Mothman situation, and talked to people. Is Ingrid Cold, I think is how he said his name. And he was written about extensively in the 60s. I think it was the late 60s after the Mothman incident happened. Again, if you go back a little bit, it seems to be, to me, more credible because of the fact that there wasn't much out there. You know what I mean? So it wasn't worth the spoof. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if you've seen the Y Files, but they did a whole episode about it.
Yeah, Ingrid Cole. Yeah, I watched the Y Files.
Yeah, that was a really good show. It blew up really quick.
Yeah, and then in Kentucky with the little gremlin deals that attacked that family, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, I think it was. This family started shooting at these little alien creatures they thought that were attacking their kind of farmstead.
Oh wow! It's called the Kelly Hopkinsville Encounter.
Yeah, there you go.
1955.
Yeah, old. So I mean, to me,
never heard of these, by the way. So you're blowing my mind right now.
The old ones always do more. I always like to see those because
or Battle of LA, right?
Yeah, exactly. Battle of LA, exactly. World War, right?
Crazy.
And but those are more credible to me because there's less.
And there's newspaper.
There's less reason to do there's less reason to hoax because they didn't get anything out of it, right? There was no money in it. There was no, shows to be on or anything. The news. Yeah. It's like crazy stuff happened to me, and I'm just telling you what happened. Kind of like the guy in the logger in Arizona who got abducted. And his crew was watched him get pulled up into the spaceship, and so it just there were 7 people, and 6 of them didn't get sucked into a spaceship, and one of them did, and he was gone for days, and then he appears days later, and he's like, "I just got abducted," and all these people are, "Yeah, we watched you get abducted."
Is that the Travis one?
Yeah, Travis Walton. Yeah.
Walton. Yeah, damn, that's a crazy one.
Yeah, I mean those. And that was like in the 70s. And so I think all these ones that are older are a little more credible because there wasn't,
internet like that. Yeah.
Right. There wasn't all these other things that could happen. So,
which makes it even more compelling, right? Because to become a celebrity back then for some story, that's crazy.
Yeah. It took a while though. I mean, he still does talks. Travis Walton does. And I think he's not, I mean, he has books and everything now, but I think at the time that wasn't the, I don't know that was the goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's become the goal because, at a certain point,
made your whole life out of it. Yeah.
Right. You either have to lean into something or get out of it in order to live because it'll just take over. There's that weird, we talked about famous people and rich people. There's that weird in between where you're not famous enough or rich enough to have all the perks of it, right? And that's the hard part, right? Because there's no safety net for you, and it's really tough. You can't just go out in public. If you're just popular enough, you'll get mobbed. But if you don't have the money that came with the fame, then how do you not get mobbed? That's the kind of the tough portion of the trajectory for people. And that's where a lot of people get lost in that fame, right?
That was weird. I just never realized that there's a medium like that. But yeah, it's a good little
that's
analogy.
Where I think a lot of people fall into drugs and then overdose or get killed because of the various trappings of fame. It's not that it is the trappings of fame, but you're kind of in that pocket, that void area where you just don't have enough of anything in order to get through to the other side of it, so it really, I mean, not to say we should feel sorry for these people, but you should in a way because it's tough, so
trying to understand no, go ahead, finish.
Oh no, that's all I had for that. I'm sorry.
Just how government transparency has evolved over the years. Do you think it's more transparent at all? I'm pretty sure you're going to say no. Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Damn.
I think that, oddly enough, we have all the tools to be totally transparent at this point. You literally could have a government app. I wouldn't put a government app on my phone, but you could have a government app on your phone where you could, I'm surprised they haven't gamified the government. You could just vote and do things all day long, and they could give you, points and, oh, you're a good citizen. You get a badge. All that stuff is possible right now with the government, and no one is doing it, right? And it's been possible for, years now, right? So, the poorest of the poor have a cell phone. You would, if you encounter people throughout your life and you're like, somebody's like, oh, I got nothing. They got a cell phone in their pocket, right? I haven't got, hey man, can you give me $10? I don't got no money. It's like, well, you got a cell phone. Anyway, that's my gripe on that, but you're paying somebody for that. But anyway, they have the ability to be totally transparent with government. Again, it is so vast that no one individual could ever keep up with anything on that scale. It would just be impossible. You would be so overwhelmed. All you would do would be pay attention to the government if you could do that even. And so we really, they can't be, almost in a way, no matter how they are, they can't be, because it's just too big at this point in order to do that for anybody. Even if they whittled it down, the problem I think then is everybody's like, well, you're not giving us the full picture, which they're not. But it's a can't win situation. So for anybody.
This is a weird one, but is there like a specific thing that your audience finds most intriguing about UFO discussions?
I don't know. So most of the time, for the show and so forth, we talk about, it's the tagline is the strange and humorous lives of two Midwesterners. And so a lot of stuff is just kind of goofy stuff. And the strange always pops up every once in a while. And I typically like to talk about things that happen to me or happen around me in close proximity, right? So it's not necessarily hearsay. It's generally first person kind of a situation. So I think as far as what they like, I think they probably enjoy that just because it is more of a first person kind of a situation, as opposed to being, I do talk, like we've been talking about things we've read and so forth, but generally whenever I talk on our show, it starts from some kind of first person interaction. So I think that's where a lot of it comes. My interest, oddly enough, grows way beyond the stuff that I always record. So I've talked more about stuff here, some of it, than I've ever talked about on my own show.
How would you assess the scientific community's engagement on the subject of UFOs?
Getting better, like we talked about Avi Loeb early on. It's getting better, and I think it's just going to get better. The issue will
even with AI, huh?
Yeah, I think the issue is going to be. Has anybody asked AI? Is there extraterrestrial? I haven't seen that. You should do it for your thing.
I wrote a white paper on it, just tying in all the stories together. Mm-hmm. So but all of the authors' abductions.
ChatGPT and said, ChatGPT, what do you think about this?
Just aliens in general?
Yeah, if it's real.
I mean, yeah. I mean, go ahead, continue, and I'll look it up.
I'm just saying. Has anybody asked AI is an amalgam of us, right? Mm-hmm. AI doesn't have knowledge beyond knowledge that we have.
So scientifically, no.
Really? Okay. Well, then there you go.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So, what about non-scientifically?
I mean, it says we've been fascinated for generations.
Okay.
But I'm just over here thinking about John E. Mack's work and all the discredited people now at this point. Yeah.
But AI is just an amalgam of everything we know. So if you want to have an answer, you just ask AI, and that's probably the popular answer. Because that's where it's getting information from.
Man, that's super true. Yeah, and it's also why it's biased, I guess.
Right. I say AI is the great plagiarizer. That's all it is right now. It just plagiarizes everyone and then gives everybody the answer that you came up with. It will look at and then push it in with everything else and give everybody the answer from plagiarizing all of the people who are doing the work.
But what's funny though is the pushback. It's just like it'll help you speed up your research and find articles and things, and people are still pushing back. It's funny. Yeah. Can you describe a particular memorable moment from your podcasting career that related to the UFOs?
Oh, well, I did a whole episode on the one I told you. So my UFO sighting would be probably the biggest one. I've also done episodes
maybe you can
on
just
paranormal
tell the viewers
too.
which one it is so they can find it.
Oh my gosh. Back in 2003, I'd have to look it up, to be honest with you. The funny thing is it's called UFO Roach.
Mm-hmm.
UF Roach is the name of it because my partner kept telling me I was high when I saw this.
Oh my gosh.
Which I was not, but that was, at the time that was the, how people reacted, and that's how he reacted to it. He's like, oh, you had to have been high. And I'm like, no.
Wow. That's a good ass point though.
It's called UF Roach, and it was from May 25th, 2005 is when it was released. Damn,
you've been doing this.
It happened just before that.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be notable for that. And then I've had other paranormal things happen. Actually, more paranormal things, and I generally talk about all of those as well when they happen. I always, that becomes show fodder for sure. And they're just weird things. Again, I'm not seeking these things. You mentioned Everywhere is Haunted at the intro. And that all came about from having lunch with some friends, and we were talking about the subject. And I said, well, if in the discussion, I said, well, if you're to believe all of the people in the paranormal world that somebody has to have died or some kind of thing have happened in that area for that to be paranormal activity, then Everywhere is Haunted. And we laughed, and I said that would be a great name for a website. And then I made Everywhere is Haunted, and what I did in that was I would run around to places and I have 13 questions that I ask to try to get a reaction to see if it's haunted. And I just randomly go to places and do these 13 questions to see if I get any kind of EVP. So far, I have not.
Oh my God. I thought that was going to be way better.
Sorry. No, unfortunately, Everywhere isn't haunted is the thing. And it's not that it's a little bit tongue in cheek in a way, but it's also to show that, again, we're not focusing on, just because somebody died everywhere, something died everywhere. Think about it. Crickets, frogs, turtles, every piece of land, something that you
Insects,
probably walk on,
microorganisms.
Something has died on. So there should be some kind of residual haunting, which that tongue-in-cheek part is that's not true, and that means you shouldn't really be talking like that. You should think about things that are beyond that, because it is beyond that. There's a reason for these things happening. We just haven't figured out what that reason is yet. And but a weird thing, real quick, because I have to do something at 3, but real quick story on that. I was at a hotel in Columbia, Missouri. It was a Holiday Inn, and I was getting ready to go to sleep, and something, because I was by myself, burped in my ear.
Oh my God. I
was not doing anything to figure out paranormal, look for paranormal. I was going to bed because I had driven there and was going to be doing something the next day. And I went to bed and I rolled over, and the next thing I know, the loudest burp happened right in my ear inside a hotel room. Now, I just blew it off, right? I was actually on an end room where the hallway was going across the front of the room and across the side of the room. And I thought somebody was in the hallway and they burped. And I just heard it very loudly because this is a, not very well built hotel or something. And I went to sleep.
Your mind brushes it off.
Yeah, I went to sleep. Next day, I had to do some work in the hotel, and so I went down to my work, and then I had to come check out during a break, and I had gotten everything ready in my suitcase so that I could just grab my stuff and go. I had I had a pair of crappy shoes that I wore to get there and a pair of nice shoes to wear during the day. I put the crappy shoes in a bag on the bed, not at the edge, about where they put that fake quilt or whatever, on beds.
They fell off the bed.
They fell off the bed.
Get me out.
Throw it away. They were out of the bag on the floor when I came back, and that was the only thing that moved. And they were secure. They were on the bed more than enough to where
there's no way
you wouldn't like the maid didn't come in and brush up against them. I mean, who in their right mind comes into somebody's room and throws their shoes on the floor? I don't know. The shoes were on the floor, and I'm like, son of a bitch, something is in here with me. And I slept with it last night and didn't think about it, even though it burped in my ear.
I mean, were you scared at all, or you just kind of were like, wow?
No, I was like, it was late,
a little intrigued.
The people.
The next day, though. The next day.
Oh, next day I was all freaked out. I got right out of the room, and I finished I was leaving anyway. I got out of there. And I'm like, I'm not coming back. I'm like, is it the room? I've stayed at this hotel like countless numbers of times over the years because it's just one of these places that I have to go to. And never anything. And then that night, bizarre, totally bizarre.
Just a couple questions because I know you got to go.
Yep.
If you could have one question answered about UFOs, what would it be?
What's the real ones and what's the government ones? I mean, where's the dividing line?
Damn, that's so basic, and it would solve a lot of problems. You're right.
Is it the round ones, the real ones, and the triangles are government? I mean, where are we at here? There's not that many shapes.
I guess two more questions, just
sure.
quickly. Do you think there's a connection between UFO sightings and other unexplained phenomena? I feel like you said yes.
Yeah.
But we're
definitely.
talking like cryptids and ghost sightings.
Yeah, I think it could all be one thing that we're just misinterpreting because of context. If it's in the sky, it's a UFO. If it's on the ground, it's a haunting or a cryptid. But I think it could all be the same thing.
Well,
not the same thing, but all be related to each other. So.
Yeah, the cooler one I heard recently was like a ship is technically a submarine in the sky, like it's moving down the dimensions.
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
Could be.
Last question: what does it mean to me to be more than rich?
Oh, for me to be more than rich?
Yeah, that's the theme of the show. So what does it mean
more than rich. Yeah, I thought your name was Rich, but it's not. So I guess impunity. So if I had total impunity, I'd be more than rich, right? So
Damn. I've never heard that one, but that's a pretty good one. I like that one.
That would be my thought. I mean, being rich would be fantastic, but more than rich would have to be beyond stuff.
Nothing can happen.
Yeah, nothing can touch you. I mean, I think that's the problem with a lot of rich people is they think they have impunity and they don't, and they find out pretty quickly. Harvey Firestein and all these people, like that. Yeah.
Damn, Bob. Well, I learned a lot today on UFOs and spirituality, consciousness, all together. So appreciate that. Any last words? And can you tell the crowd about your character just real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're going to listen to this guy? He's a cat. He's a cat.
At the
talking
very
as a
end,
cat. So I have a little avatar that I use for interviews and things. Yeah. I'm Bob LeMent at Static Radio, and I typically do these interviews as a blue cat. And so Joe has been talking. I like your last name, Joe Cat. Yeah. And do him as a blue cat, and that's the character that just came out of the show for a bunch of various reasons. But I would say. You can check us out, staticradio.com, at Static Radio for most of the socials. And I would love to come back on. I have all kinds of other stuff to talk about. Maybe in a couple months we could swing back around.
Hell yeah, definitely. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure there'll be more updates in the UFO world. So we'll talk then.
Yeah, definitely.
Dope, Bob. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.